Okay, well, we're back on the little Atlas lathe again. I told you I'd show you what my little handle was that I built, and I'll do that in just a minute here. It's actually a handle for the carriage stop, for the 6-position carriage stop from the Atlas lathe. Just makes things a little bit easier to shift that. Won't work for all applications, but for this setup, why, it'll work really well. And actually, I've already got it set up. It works real nice. What it does is allows me to rotate that carriage stop quite a bit easier. And you couldn't rotate it through the whole 6 positions. It's only good for 3 of the positions the way it mounts on there. But for these small setups, and for this setup in particular, this is the first run we're doing on this lathe, and I'm only using 2 positions on that carriage stop, so this will work fine for it. So I'll show you a picture of that in just a minute. Anyway, what we're building is these little bushings right here, and we're just cutting them out of 3/8 stock. This is 3/8 stainless, although it wouldn't matter if it was stainless or not. And what these are is these are the little tool holders or adapter bushings that are going in our adjustable tool holders that fit in the tailstock. And so these are 3/8 board, and that's what we're doing first, is the 3/8, and they'll sit right into these tool posts. If I get the bolt out of the way, get them set up in there, it slides right in there like that. And of course it wouldn't have this little nubbin on it. This is a nubbin that's left over, but it'll get machined off in subsequent machining operations. So the setup on this is we are running it through our outer collet. We're facing and center drilling the outside. We're beveling this front edge. Then we're going back and beveling the back edge in combination with parting it off there. And that leaves our little nubbin. I don't know if I showed that very well or not, but have that centered up. So we're facing off this end and center drilling it with our little nubbin, beveling off the edge, then starting our part on the back side, going back in with that bevel tool again, and then we finish parting it off. So like I say, this little nubbin, it'll get machined off later on. I'm not concerned about it. From here, these will go over to the milling machine. There's about 3 more operations. Actually, before it goes to the milling machine, it will go and it'll be drilled or drilled and reamed to whatever size we want for whatever drill bits there are we want to use. If we're holding a tap, which I normally won't use a tap in that position, but for a countersink or something like that, we just bore them if they're smaller than 3/8. And in the bigger tool holders, same size, but we've got a 1/2-inch hole in the other 2 of those. We'll do a set of a few 1/2-inch bushings too to fit those. So that's the setup. So from here they'll be drilled, reamed, whatever the case may be, to hold whatever we want to hold there. Then they go to the milling machine. They'll have a flat machined, basically in the center on top, and that will hold it when we put it in our tool holder. That's this set screw will lock it in place. Plus it orients it, because we'll also take it in the milling machine and we're going to slit down the side. We've got to build a little jig for that, but it'll hold these bushings once they're drilled. Then we go back and we take a slitting saw and slit probably 80% through beyond, so we've got 10, 15, 20% left on this side of it to hold it together. So then when we put it back in our tool holder, put our tool into it, whatever it is, and then we clamp it down. While that also puts pressure on it and holds it in position. Alright, so here's our little tool handle that we built yesterday. The Vanna White thing. And all it is makes it easier to rotate our stops to different positions. We could actually do 4. That one will engage, all is not engaged in the detent. There's a position, there's a lock position, and there's a lock position. So here's our carriage coming against our stop. Now there's several different ways this lathe could have been set up, and well, first off, let me just show you this in action here. So this is going to be the position where we cut our back bevel and then part off the tool. When it's in this position right here, that's going to add our bevel to the front edge of that. So those are the only 2 positions I'm going to use. Now, room is really tight on these little lathes, as I've stated before, so you have to plan your tooling out a little bit, otherwise things interfere. With the carriage in this position, with this stop holding it in that position, there's not enough room for the other operations of the turret tailstock to operate. So for this to work, it has to be in this position here for the carriage to come back. Since I'm only using it in 2 positions, This is the one that sets our length. And then what I did is I took both this position, which is number 3 and number 1, and I've adjusted them to the same length. So when I want to part it off and bevel it, it doesn't matter if I've rotated it up. We're going to use this as our base position, or call this our base position. I can either rotate it up or else I can rotate it down, and the stops are set the same on those, so the carriage will stop in the same position, so it doesn't matter. So if someone were, other than me, were operating it and wasn't paying attention, or if I'm not paying attention, it doesn't matter if I go up or down. This is the only important stop. What I was going to do was, and that's our stop, so we'll run that forward, release our collet, move our stock through the headstock, through the collet, retighten it. Then my initial thought was I was going to put a pointing tool in the tailstock next. That would give us our bevel on this outer edge. Then I was going to go to the facing tool with the center point in it. And that gives us our center point in the middle of this. Go in and do that. Then I was going to part it off with a bevel just like I've got now. The problem with that is I haven't built a pointing tool that would have added that bevel there. So what I've done is I've used an adjustable tail, or I've used my carriage stop, adjustable carriage stop, and we're going to run it back to this position where we want to part it off. We set our stop, run it there, then we run in the same bevel tool that we're using on the back side of that. That gives us our front bevel right there. And we come off of that, move our carriage stop back, and that gives us our part off position. So that's what I ended up and did, and it's going to work quite well. I've already ran a couple of test parts on it, and we're just going to run a couple more, and I'll show you what that process is. So we're already centered up there, and we're still manually oiling these. So we'll get her started. We're going to go ahead and face it and point it. Our stop set back here for that length. There, we're set for our next operation. Move our carriage back. That gives us our bevel. We start our part. Go back in and bevel the back edge. Then we can complete our parting off operation. And then we're ready for our next part. Bring our tailstock back up, release our collet, feed our stock forward, lock it, come to our facing position. Centered and pointed. It's just that quick. Alright, this is maybe a little bit better view so you can see. I'm not sure if it's still ideal. But anyway, what we're doing is we're bringing our length gauge there, release it, bring it up against our stop, and we're locked in position. Rotate our tailstock turret around for our centering and facing tool. This is our front bevel. Give us our back bevel. And there we're parted off. That's all there is to making those. Just that quick. I'm going to make up a few more, so I've got 20 or 25 in stock to just get started. Anyway, that's the way they look. Beveled on the back end, or beveled on the front end, center pointed, faced off, bevel on the back end, and parted off. So next operation, we'll machine a little flat across the top, a little 3/8 flat that will index on the top of that tool holder. Then we'll go back, drill them to whatever size we want them, and then slit them. We've got to build a little slitting jig. So when we go to machining these the rest of the way, we'll bring you back and we'll show that. Anyway, that's the initial setup that we're doing for this little lathe. These are the first parts to come off of it. So pretty happy with it. A little light duty lathe that does a lot of things like this. I've got another job that's going to take a little more setup on it. Plus we need adjustable tool holders, so I've got to do a few of these and get that ready to run. And then we'll show that job. So not a whole lot different than this, still out of 3/8 stainless rod, but we've got a counter bore in it and a couple of little features that go on it. So that'll be another interesting little project. We're just going to develop this lathe a little bit at a time and start doing little projects on it. And as we need more tooling and get more complex with it, why we'll adapt to it until we get a good feel for this and how well it's going to work. So anyway, as always, guys, if you've got any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, you might want to, and follow along. If you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch. Well, you get the idea. That's how quick and easy it is. I'm going to finish running out this bar, and then we'll be done with this project for now. Well, here's my little bounty of adapters that I turned out. And they're ready to go to the mill, have the slots cut in the top. After I shut the camera off, I got the phone out with the timer on it and watched it. Actually, it was cycle times a little bit under 45 seconds a piece for these. So, and that was hurrying. That was trying to just see how fast I could produce them. But even at that, why they're well under a minute apiece to produce these adapters to this point, and I'll have more than that in finishing them out. But anyway, now I've got adapters that I can go ahead, bore to the sizes I want, I'll go ahead, machine out the rough blanks, get the slot cut in the top, and then as I need them, while I'll finish out the adapters, we'll drill them and ream them, and then slit them. I've still got to build a little slitting jig, so that'll be one of the next projects here that we'll show.